So I guess sort of, start things off. I was wondering if you can kind of take us back to maybe early in your life when you kind of first were drawn to humor and you realized that, you could be a true performer and this was something that, you wanted to pursue.
Right. So my dad was from New York, New Jersey. He was born in Queens. Then he went to Teaneck High School in New Jersey and Rutgers. And he took a transfer to Minnesota when I was in kindergarten. I had been born in Kansas City, then briefly in New Jersey. We lived in Florham Park. And then we went to Minnesota, and my dad worked in St. Paul. And my dad was really, really funny. So
Ah,
sometimes I say he's a Steve Allen type, but not everyone remembers Steve Allen. So I'll say Johnny Carson. But Steve Allen
ah,
preceded Johnny Carson. And Steve Allen was musical. He played the piano. My dad played piano by ear. My dad did voices. And he was just very funny. And I just loved comedy from an early age. And I'll give you some shows and people that I liked growing up. The first one is The Honeymooners with Jackie Gleason. And then there was a show called Fernwood Tonight with Martin Mull, who I got to interview later and got to know.
ah,
And Saturday Night Live came around, I want to say 75 or 76, Chevy Chase and those guys. And then Bill Murray
right.
joined, and Bill Murray is the funniest man in the world. Monty Python, we also watched. So those were some of the comedic influences. And I always describe my childhood as basketball and comedy. So I was
You
really into
played basketball, right?
comedy.
In college
Yeah,
briefly? Are you?
I played. I started playing hoops in second grade. My dad put up a basket in the driveway, and I took to it. I was coordinated and tall and coordinated. And I played at Montana State, got a full ride, scored 20 one night at Idaho. I was recruited to play two guard. My best games were at point guard. I could handle the ball and pass. So love hoops, love hoops.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your, I guess, sort of first, major role on TV that you had, which was at ESPN. I think there you sort of had these cool segments like the um, called the Feel Good Edition. You had kind of signature lines that you would say, like Jumanji, for example, something I think many people still kind of talk about today. It's a great line that you would use, but you brought a very distinct style, and you kind of really shifted how sports could be presented. Kind of combining humor and sports, which I think is a great combination. So I guess can you talk about how you approached, that role when you were at ESPN and how you sort of infused humor into the sports world, which I guess is, many people, didn't really do that at
Right.
that time yet.
Well, I was down in LA first taking classes. I wanted to do a sitcom. So when I was in college, I said, "Oh, I can't play in the NBA. I'll be a sportscaster or play by play." But secretly, I said, you know, I like Johnny Carson, but I also like
Right.
Cheers. And there's only
Yeah.
one Johnny Carson, and there are a whole bunch of sitcoms. I want to do a sitcom, so I went to L.A., took an improv class. Hard to get an agent. I was in my early 20s, and then I got a sportscasting job up in Monterey, and I was just obsessed with comedy. Some of the people I worked with up there in Monterey, some of the reporters said, "You're going to be on Saturday Night Live. You're funny." And then I got the job. I was offered Sports Center, and I almost didn't want to do it because I wanted to do, like, I thought about doing stand up. And when I was down in LA, I used to go to the Comedy Store on Monday night, and I would see Jim Carrey before in Living Color, and some names you won't know like Argus Hamilton and Jackson Purdue, and I saw Andrew Dice Clay. And I never did stand up. I thought about it, but I respected
Yeah.
it too much because somebody said, if you're doing it just to get discovered for a sitcom, don't do it. Do it because you want to
Yeah.
be a really good stand up. And they said it takes 5 years to get a good 20 minutes. And it doesn't bother me that I didn't do it because it's really not in my DNA. I'm not that aggressive, but I love writing jokes, coming up with
Right.
comedy. And I think that way. And some of the guys I admire didn't do stand up. Bill Murray didn't do stand up. Conan O'Brien didn't do stand up. So I did take the job at ESPN, but I apparently I told a few people there, I didn't know because they told me later, that I said I wanted to do late night.
Right.
And I just did a lot of jokes at ESPN, and
Right.
it was a blast. A lot of pop culture references, and then I got the Daily Show after that.
Yeah. Right. So I guess I was wondering, like, when you hosted that show, what did you think about the show's ability to sort of use humor to, talk about kind of current events and to kind of inform audiences about certain issues in a way that was kind of very relatable and that could connect with your audience?
Yeah, it's Daily Show was a news parody, which has been done before. There was a show called Not Necessarily the News, obviously Weekend Update, and people loved it. People loved
Yeah.
uh, the jokes about current events and pop culture. And so my humor was more irreverent, where
Right.
you'd have the traditional jokes, and then I liked irreverent humor, which I would have a non sequitur and I'd dance, dance, dance on Thursday. I just stand up and start dancing. And then I would do a joke to end that bit. And we played 5 questions, which was irreverent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what's interesting, the Daily Show was an odd place because it was a group of us thrown together, and it later worked itself out after I left for CBS. The new host fired everybody, including the executive producer. But I was working with some people that I probably shouldn't have been working with. But everyone had their own agenda. Like you ask about the jokes. Some people were very political, and they wanted to do their political jokes attacking the other side. And I've always
Right.
been apolitical. I'm an independent, and the humor, when I say irreverent, that's kind of what Conan is. I don't really hear him talk politics. And I've told people that my favorite late night host is Johnny Carson, and then Letterman. But for pure comedy, I think Conan is the funniest guy. So
Right.
I had a blast at the Daily Show, even though it was very dysfunctional.
Right. Yeah. And obviously now it's hosted by Jon Stewart. So I guess I was curious, what do you think about kind of the way that the show's evolves? And obviously now it's a little bit more political than when you hosted it. So I guess I was curious, yeah, about what you think about the show now. Like, do you still watch it at all? Or
I don't watch it. I watch Bill Maher. It's just a habit. I
uh,
like his panel. I like that he has different guests on. But I would say when someone commits to doing an all political show, I admire it, even if I disagree with them. So what Bill Maher does and Jon Stewart is great, and it serves a purpose. And I call those guys political late night hosts. And then you have the traditional hosts like Leno and Letterman, and I was one of those. And of course, now it's it's changed where even
yeah.
the traditional hosts are doing a lot of politics,
Right.
Colbert and Kimmel. And
Yeah.
but I got it out of my system, and I had a blast doing it though.
Yeah. Then you transitioned to the Late Late Show on CBS, and there, you had again great ratings, like great audience, people loved you, but you still decided to kind of walk away from that. So I guess I was wondering why you sort of made that decision.
Um, well, it was an easy decision, and most people don't understand it. But I left for creatively. I got bored with late night. It was redundant. We had a lot of different shows. Pop culture bored me. The comedy I wasn't into, and also I could see that it was all of my writers were very political. They were heavily into politics, and I just don't want to talk politics. I think I'm very level-headed. I joke that I'm the most level-headed man in America sometimes because I can see the positives on both sides, and I'm right in the middle. But there's also a thing called social commentary, and I wasn't interested in any of that. And I realized the humor I was into was pretty narrow, and it would probably be in a scripted form. I was a fan of Frasier. That was my favorite sitcom. And so I walked away very content, very grateful that I was able to get that gig because that was my favorite gig. Unlike The Daily Show, which you had interviews for 4 minutes, it was a half-hour show. Late Late Show was an hour, and I could go a long time and interview someone special. Like I had Clint Eastwood on, and we went the entire hour talking to
Wow.
Clint. So, yeah, it was a blast, but it was fun walking away for me.
Yeah. I want to transition a little bit and talk about the, I guess, kind of like persona that you kind of had on TV that a lot of people love, and it's kind of very unique to you. And that was sort of this almost, pompous, sort of smug, kind of like dry humor in a way that I think is very authentic to you on TV, and people love that. So I guess I was wondering sort of how you kind of came up with that crap, whether or not that was just an act, or is that sort of really you, or yeah, sort of
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit.
people ask me that, how much of it is real. I'm a nice kid, down to earth from the Midwest. I just find it funny. I think it's healthier to be self liking than self loathing. Um, I was influenced by Bill Murray. They used to call his character lovably cocky. Um,
Right.
so I just think in our society in general, we're too patient with the whiners and the malcontents. And I kind of do instinctively what I think is funny, and I don't always deconstruct it.
Right.
But there are different ways to describe it: the anti-nerd, anti-neurotic, urbane, sophisticated, aristocratic, all different kind of things. But I'm just having fun.
Yeah. So you had that famous segment that now is very popular and like it's very synonymous with you, which was the 5 question segment. I saw you on Rich Eisen twice actually, and both times like Rich always does that, kind of fun thing
Yeah.
where at the end of the sit down, he asks you, those 5 questions. So I guess how did you sort of come up with that segment, and why do you think it was so popular with audiences?
I was in New York. We were in pre-production for The Daily Show, and I was down at the Bowery Bar, and there was this girl I met, and I uh, I was tired, and she was tired, and I said, "Well, let me just ask you 5 questions. I just want to get to know you quickly." And I did these 5 questions, and I told the producer about it at The Daily Show, and she goes, "We should do that on the air because it's the viewers connect with the host, and they want the personality of the host." And part of the joy of 5 questions was there'd be silly things where I'd say, what are the 2 ingredients that make a BLT magical? And this is just my opinion, and so my opinion would override their answer sometimes. It's the mayonnaise and the bacon, the grease on grease. That's what's magical about a BLT. And so there were a lot of opinions in there, and I acted like it was pretty serious. And people really, really enjoyed 5 questions. It was the most popular segment on the show when I was there, and they did a Daily Show book about it, actually.
Oh wow. I've heard you say that kind of, unlike a lot of people, your comedy doesn't come from I guess you could say, dark place. I guess one sort of common thing that a lot of people sort of talk about is the idea of the tortured comedian, and how a lot of people sort of their humor is born out of dark
Right.
places or dark things. But you've said that that's not you at all. Like your comedy is more out of things like just joy and just making people laugh. So I guess I was wondering, what do you think it is about joy and kind of pleasure that fuels great comedy for you?
Um, it's a lot of smiling and laughing and being clever and turning a phrase. I'm going to tell you about that. So some of the people I worked with late night and the people in life, there's a bitterness that I don't relate to. And I think it's undisciplined that they're the most bitter people are the most talkative people. Or they're most opinionated. And again, I say we're too patient with them. So a lot of anger. I don't relate to it. But as far as turning a phrase, when I was in elementary school, we had to read, required reading for school, and then I did outside reading. And there was a magazine called Sports Illustrated, which was in its heyday in the 70s. And this British journalist said, "I heard the best writers in America write for Sports Illustrated." Yep. And the writers were very clever, and they would turn a phrase. And there was this guy, Jim Murray, who later wrote for the LA Times, Willie Mays' glove is where triples go to die. And it was poetic. And I did like at ESPN, I did when someone shot a jump shot on the highlights, I'd say release, rotation,
Yeah,
splash.
yeah. Right.
And it's just sometimes it's merely poetic, sometimes it's comedic and poetic. And so my brother calls it my boyish enthusiasm, but I just have a positive outlook on life. And a lot of the humor I do is poking fun at my self absorption. And on my Instagram, which is really fun for me, I'll wear
Lord kill me,
ascots. I'll
right? Yeah.
talk about my tight pores in my face, and I drink in moderation. Um, I'll say I have narrow hips. It's just silly. It's silly stuff.
Getting back to that point you mentioned earlier about how in your sort of comedy and that you wield, you always try to not infuse too much politics into it. So I guess I was wondering, what do you think are some of the dangers or I guess some of the downfalls of when you combine things like, current events and politics that are very serious with humor? Because I think now we see, obviously, like with the, recent late night news and obviously Stephen Colbert's show, how, at times sometimes satire in a way can be, I guess, weaponized sort of, and
Hmm.
when you combine humor and politics, sometimes it can be dangerous. I mean, there are the benefits, obviously, of it, but it can also be, dangerous in a way. And I guess I was curious about, what you thought about humor and politics and why you sort of want to separate yourself from combining those two.
Well, I was raised not to talk politics, and also when I did it, I tried to take shots at both sides. You, you get a better audience there. Johnny Carson did that. Leno had the number one rated show, and people thought he was independent. They didn't know what his
Right.
politics is or was. Everyone knew Letterman was a liberal, but he didn't do it in his monologue. He did it a lot with his guests. If he had on certain people, he might argue with them. It's satisfying if you're hardcore a political zealot and you hate the other side, and a lot of times it is hate. It's very satisfying to hear a joke or write a joke that attacks the other side, and it's effective. When there's a political debate, one of my disagreements is when you watch a debate and someone's making a good point and the other person really can't counter, but then does a joke to diffuse it or to change subjects or to score a point, and then the audience doesn't know that guy didn't have something to say there, so they did a joke, and the audience
Yeah.
might say, "Oh, he won," and even though the other guy made a legitimate point. But I think it's healthy to have a political humor. Winston Churchill was very funny and clever,
Yeah.
and it's healthy. It's just that if you're full on the left, then your audience, they say, is cut in half. But who knows?
Right. Yeah. Not to get too political here, but obviously many people, love to talk about Trump and his humor, and some people have a lot of criticism about his humor, and they think that it's like a bully, punch down humor. Others talk about how President Barack Obama also he had a great sense of humor. Like someone like Ronald Reagan also was very synonymous for using humor. So I guess I'm kind of curious about like what you think about figures like that, presidents like Trump and Obama, and how they kind of decided to use humor in their everyday life, and whether it's making speeches and debates or I
Yeah.
don't know, it's talking to people.
Well, I think everybody gets a kick out of humor. I mean, when a NBA coach says something funny, I mean, I'm a Timberwolves fan, as you know, and Chris Finch
Yeah.
is the head coach, and
Yeah, of course.
he had, he coached Karl Anthony Towns, and Cat is a polarizing player. I'm a fan of his. He moves a certain way. He sometimes flails his arms. And Coach Finch called it stray voltage. He's got stray voltage. He'll just, and he'll say clever things. And all coaches do that. So obviously, whether it's a president or a coach or an actor, if they say something clever, we all enjoy it.
Late night right now has kind of been in the spotlight with the recent Stephen Colbert news. As someone who's hosted late night for many years and kind of seen what audiences think about it and how it, I guess, sort of bodes. What do you think about the business as a whole right now? Because many people have criticism that, it's not effective, it's not funny. Yeah, so I guess I was just curious to hear what you think about it
Well,
right now.
yeah, it's. I said when I left it was redundant. We had enough shows; they were all
Yeah,
doing pop culture, current events, repeat. Doing the same topics and covering it. But everyone knows that the audiences have been dwindling for a variety of reasons. And I remember I was talking to Jimmy Kimmel about 5 years ago, and he said, "Hey, your ratings right now would win in late night. My ratings at twelve
right.
thirty because it's just becomes fractured with all the different things, the podcasts, and the fact that YouTube blew up after I left, and then there's no reason to stay up late. Get a good night's sleep, and then watch the monologue in the morning of these shows. Uh,
Right.
so yeah, it's the golden era of late night is obviously over, and I can't anticipate fully how it's going to unfold in the next few years.
Yeah. You're still very active now, kind of with comedy. You're mentioning your podcast, The Life Gorgeous, plus also on social media, you have that new, I guess, persona, Lord Kilby, which is super funny still. So I guess, do you almost see humor for you not just as a form of sort of entertainment, but also as sort of a therapeutic quality in a way, or something for you that is very central to kind of your life and very sustaining in a way, almost like a lifeline, or
It's a creative outlet, and
yeah,
this is kind of funny, but when I did the CBS late night show, there were people who would comment on how much they enjoyed it, and some of my humor was irreverent, where I would play bossa nova music, and I would walk over to the window where we saw the nighttime sky, and you'd hear an inner voice of me kind of rehashing the act. That act one went well. A lot of those jokes hit. You'd hear my inner thoughts, and it was fun. And but again, I have this specific thing I like to do. And I left in 2004. In 2015, I wrote an article for the LA Times where I interviewed myself.
oh wow,
And I remember saying, because if you can laser in on your sensibility, it's pretty satisfying. And I wrote the LA Times article, 2015, and I said, this is like the most favorite thing I've done. This is great. And then in 2018, I joined Instagram, and it was
right.
like the article, but now with pictures and videos.
Yeah,
And people responded, and it's a couple of my writer friends from Family Guy are like, "Now you got to keep it up. You got to keep doing it." But yeah, it's. I always say I don't deconstruct, but it's some type of sensibility of aristocratic, self-absorbed, winking at the world. And as I tell the young people, breathe out the bitterness. Life is
right,
joyous, you know?
yeah, right. It can be pretty addicting too. Like from my own personal experience, because on social media, I post a lot of videos of me doing impressions of like other people's of I
Oh,
love to do like
cool.
and as I've continued to do it, I just continue to get more sucked in and like I just want to post more and more. I'm constantly checking the views and everything, so it's just very
Yeah.
addicting for me. Like at a young age here.
Hey, you started early. Good for you, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, when
yeah,
I think I came to LA, I was like 22 or 23, and I was taking the improv classes, and I was I was like, man, I was like, these guys that grew up in LA, they stay at their parents' house and they have an advantage on me. I got to pay rent. I got to buy a mattress. I got to buy a bed. But then I said to myself, everyone who's clever or funny should come out to LA, at least try it for a couple months or a year, because if
right,
it's in your system, you got to try. You got to try it. That's good that
right, yeah,
you're starting
yeah,
early.
yeah. My next question sort of has two parts to it. It's very broad, I guess, but I guess the first part is, what do you think humor's biggest power is, just in general? Like, what is it about humor you think that sort of makes it so powerful?
Well, Uh, it makes it can diffuse a situation if there's stress or tension. It can just diffuse a situation, but it can also score a point if you're trying to make a point and you say something that's humorous and clever. It's almost like it's a double point. You made your point that this is the way things should be, and then you get the fact that it was clever puts you at another level. So I just think I think it's healthy. I think it's important, and it's very very satisfying for people to do. It's
Yeah.
it's just it feels being creative. It's addicting, and if it's in your DNA, then you have to let it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the next part of my question is sort of, in your opinion, what do you think makes you so funny? Like, what's your sort of comedic superpower, you think?
I don't know. Again, I say I don't deconstruct, but when I
Yeah.
was going from Monterey to ESPN to Comedy Central to CBS, um, I always thought, I was different, unique, uh, unique sense of humor, sensibility, voice, and uh, I didn't see a lot of people doing the same things that I was doing. So I think it's important to be unique.
Yeah, so I guess the last question I had is, this is a question I always like to end all my interviews with, and it's, when you look at your whole career, sort of, and whether it's like one joke here or a skit there, what's kind of your favorite, joke or skit that you've done in your career besides five questions?
Right. Well, I did like Dance, Dance, Dance at the Daily Show, and I
Okay.
continued that because it was a non sequitur, and it was kind of like it was like European disco music, and I would I would say it's Thursday, and I would spin my head to each camera, and all I wanted to do was dance, 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 and then I would dance, the crowd would go nuts, and then I would only do it for a few seconds. I go, oh, stop, 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 stop. I can't. The last time I danced like that, I got hit in the head by Bowie's Room Key. Like I would do some joke about how the night went bad when I did that kind of provocative dancing.
Right.
I enjoyed that. There are other ones, but that was irreverent and a non sequitur. And it only really worked when you had the traditional jokes to set it up, and then all of a sudden this guy is dancing out of nowhere. So I kind of enjoyed that.
My favorite skit of yours, I think, is it was like back in the '90s, like the "Spank Me" clip. I think is still just like super funny to this day. I was actually watching it with Adam like a few days ago. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
that was
great.
those were the This Is Sports Center campaign. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think one of the things I did, which I forgot to mention, is I always made fun of things. So I was that particular spot. You had uh, some hardcore reporting by Bob Lee and Charlie Steiner because it's very important. And then all I care about is hurt me or spank me. Like what should be the catchphrase here? And I'm mocking the whole thing. And when I was at ESPN, I also I knew that we can't control the way we look, and I was kind of had this pretty boy or angelic look, and I tried to be low key on camera. But then once we went to the highlights, I would let loose, and the games were over, so I could say anything I wanted. But I pretended I hadn't seen the pass or the dunk, and I would react like if it was live. Like, oh wow, oh Weber, oh Steve Kerr,
right.
on it, fundamentally sound, and but I'm making fun of it, and I even my first week when I did the CBS Late Late Show, I'd come out, I'd make the entrance, and I'd say, "Hey, everybody, who wants to hear some monologue jokes?" I was making fun, and a little bit of a smart aleck,
yeah,
sarcastic.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the insights that you gave me. Super thankful. Yeah, huge fan of you again.
Thank you.
I'm really happy that we could make this happen. So yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Kavi, and good luck to you.
Thank you.